Think about this. What if The Matrix isn't science fiction? What if it's a documentary?
Today's exit interview is with Jim Rogers. Jim is a legendary superintendent in the company. Started his career at Hilton Coliseum, working for his dad, and has been on a tear of being creative, being real influential with people, and being a really mindful, really thoughtful guy all the way along his career. And I'm confident you'll hear that today from him. It's never a dull moment with Jim, and I'm sure that will become obvious to you as you listen to this. So, without any further ado, Jim Rogers. So tell me about where you grew up and what your family was like growing up.
Well, we moved from Corning, Iowa when I was like 4 years old. I guess I should tell you about my brothers.
Okay.
The oldest was my sister, and she'd moved out and got married before I was ever born. In fact, her daughter's the same age as me, so my niece and I are the same age.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the next two down were my twin brothers, George and Harley. And they're identical twin brothers. So when they graduated high school, they wanted to go to Iowa State. So we moved to Ames when they came up here. So I was 4 then. And they took one semester and figured out they're pretty little fish in a pretty big sea, and they decided they'd go in the Army.
Sure.
After their stint in the Army, they met these 2 girls in West Virginia. They were identical twin sisters, so my identical twin brothers married identical twin sisters, and they've lived next door to each other their whole lives. So that was kind of interesting. And then, of course, my other brother, Jerry, he's like 6 years ahead of me, so and he's still in Ames here. In fact, we built his church out there, the Baptist Church, Heartland Baptist Church was our project.
Yep.
So he's pretty happy that I got to set their steeple for him.
I bet.
With the crane.
I bet. So you had a sister, so there's 20-year span of kids that your family had. So were you the baby?
You f***er, that's what my mom always, I just hated that. This is my baby. Always referred to me as the baby.
Okay.
There was a brother ahead of me, and that's why there's such a big span between me and Jerry, but I had a brother right in between that died of pneumonia.
Oh, bummer.
Before I was born, so.
So why did your parents stop having kids after you?
I think it was the red hair. But here's something. My mom didn't tell me I had red hair. She always told me it was brown. In about second grade, I was making fun of Bobby Nelson. He had like copper-colored hair. I was calling him Copper Top, and he goes, well, what are you talking about? You got red hair. Oh, it ain't red, it's brown. So as soon as I got home, I had to jump up on the toilet to look in the mirror. And I looked, I go, it's red. It just blew my bubble. And I asked her once, why did you tell me I had brown hair? And she goes, well, I didn't want you to know you had red hair. Like I wouldn't find out someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom was pretty mean.
Yeah, so your dad worked construction. What'd your mom do? Stay home and raise you, or she work outside the home?
Pretty much stayed at home. Every once in a while, she'd get a job. Like she worked at Donnelly's for a while, and they sent out mailer stuff. She'd do that.
Yeah.
She worked at a drive-in once in West Ames there. I don't even remember what it was, but she'd always bring home chocolate malts at night when she'd get off. That was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Big problem was my dad had to cook. And he'd do a lot of experimental cooking, but
So your dad would cook when your mom was working, or
Yeah.
did he just like to cook?
No.
Okay.
No, he didn't like to cook. But
So your dad. So tell me about your dad. Was in construction. So tell me about him.
well, actually, in Corning, he was a farmer, but the outfit in Boone, I keep forgetting their name.
Graybaugh?
Graybaugh.
Yeah.
They come to Corning and build a bank, and he worked for them there. And that's right when my brothers decided to go to school. So he came to Ames. I think he was going to get a job with them, or maybe he worked for them for a little bit, but then he ended up going over to Thompson's, and they hired him. And he's like a superintendent right from the start.
So how old was he, you suppose? Late 20s?
40s, probably.
40s? Okay.
Yeah.
What did he start doing? He was a superintendent. Do you remember some of the jobs he worked on?
The one I remember was Hilton Coliseum, because I'd have to go out on weekends, especially before this big ice floor pour. That was like 1,200 yards or something. Took them like a day or so to pour it, but that weekend before the pour, we'd go out, he'd think about something, get worried about something. I'd have to go out and hold the grade stick. We was out checking all the grade pins.
Okay.
That was interesting. But
So ice floor, so was that the floor of Hilton prepared for like an ice rink for
Yeah.
hockey or ice shows?
yeah, there's like 10 miles of piping in it. Of course, back in them days, it was steel piping, so I don't think it lasted long.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never
Yeah.
heard of an ice show in there anymore.
No.
So what did he do on the Hilton project? Was he
Oh, he was the head superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you work, I think I've heard a story where you worked on that job or you
Yeah,
helped
just
on
as
that
they
job?
were finishing up, I'd worked out on the interstate on some little bridge culverts, and I needed a job, so he got me in there. And here's kind of a funny thing, because, that was all union work.
Yeah.
So I always thought it was strange, because all his guys would come over and visit all the time, them and their wives, being union, but he was management, and that's usually like oil and water. But that's how I kind of figured out he was a wizard class from the start. I just didn't know it back then. But yeah, he always took care of his guys. It was like a tribe,
Yeah, so what do you think, what was it about your dad that made him wizard class now that you look back on it?
Well, he knew who he worked for.
And who was that?
He works for, it's all priorities. First priority is you got to get the work done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one priority. There's a lot of people want to pull you away from that and take your time, but you've got to have a pretty good compass to stay focused. And the second part is you're working for your guys. You're not working for Mike Esposito or Pat Geary.
Right.
Your whole focus is your guys, and then your subs too. They're part of your team also, so you got to take care of your subs too.
Agreed.
Some are good, some aren't, but you still gotta get them to come through.
Yep. So you started, you were 18-ish maybe when you were working on Hilton?
Yeah, probably 19. I worked for my brother a little bit, but that didn't work out. And TV business, electronics was all
Wow.
going solid state anyhow. So
Okay. So tell me about then your career in construction. So it started on the interstate, some bridge culverts. So walk me through how you grew up in the industry.
started at Hilton, just labor work. Kermit Lenning, he was like one of my dad's favorite foremans. He kind of guided me around. I did what I was told and then got done with that job. And then I went to work at the women's gym with Stanley Stecker. He was a superintendent for Thompson's and
Okay.
worked there. I even labored for Kevin Thompson's dad, Franny Thompson.
I'll be darned.
He's a carpenter. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, back then, if you started at 8, you had all your shit out there and you were working by 8 o'clock. It's none of this wander into the trailer and do your plan and then go out. And then quitting time, you worked right up to quitting time, then put up all your shit and left. It was a little different. It was union, you had rules.
Sure.
But then after the women's gym got done with kind of late winter, then that spring Allen construction started up. So of course Kermit, my dad hired Kermit, and then I got into. It was interesting.
So that was all part of the whole double-breasted.
I like that a lot better because I didn't have all these rules. I couldn't even saw a board for Thompson's, because I was a laborer. I had a hammer and a tape measure and a scraper. That's all you're allowed to do. And then you could shovel, of course.
Okay, so that had to be in the 60s. So what were so when you came
Probably
to
right, 1970, I think. 71, I started for Thompson's right in there. Of course, you guys got me down as starting March of 1972 for Allen's, but
okay,
I didn't get any of my Thompson time in. I just wasn't consistent
didn't get any
enough.
credit for that?
No.
So what did you do at Allen's? Did you then?
Well, our first job was, I don't know the name of the sorority, little sorority there in Campus Town. That was kind of fun. We did footings and framed it up, and then somebody else did the finishing inside. But and after that, we went up to Gilbert and set that modular house. Then after that, went to the ISU bookstore between Memorial Union and I guess it's Memorial Union bookstore, between it and the parking ramp. My dad built the parking ramp.
Okay.
That was one of his jobs before I started with him. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I was a rod buster there, so I was learning a lot.
I bet.
That's where I got to kind of run the crane. Bobby McKenna had show me what to do, and wasn't an operator yet. I was just a runner.
Sure.
Big difference between operating and running. But that's where I got my feet wet in the crane operating business.
Is there a piece of equipment that we own that you can't operate?
I don't think so.
Is there a piece of equipment that we own that you shouldn't operate?
Oh, absolutely not.
So you've grown up with tools on in equipment seats.
Well, actually, when I started, we had the original cordless tools. Brace and bit, handsaw, cordless drill was a...
Yep. Hand drill.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then we migrated, like I say, when I started, there was only 3 tools in the warehouse. A couple of World War II saws, skill saws, like a 16-inch and a 12-inch skill saw. Nobody'd ever use them. You'd always use your hand saw.
Sure.
Back then, the carpenters, when they, at lunchtime, they'd hurry up and eat their sandwich, and then they'd take their file and sharpen their saw up while they, just tune it up, because sharp saws takes less energy than a dull one.
That's right.
So they were pretty smart there.
So you, when did you become either a foreman or superintendent? What was your progression?
I worked with my dad on a couple jobs. Then we had Marty Martinson start, and I worked with him for quite a few years. Marty was really good at carpenter stuff. I learned a lot of carpenter skills from him.
He was.
Progressed through there. We started doing Butler buildings and got pretty good at that. I really liked the Butler buildings. It's all modular. I just loved the modular stuff,
Sure.
And then it's always 3, 6, 9. Everything's in inches. Yeah, it was kind of tense when we first started out because we was double-breasted, so there was always a lot of animosity between the JTS guys and us Allen guys.
So when did that When did that subside, or when did that?
When they got done with vet med, I think they just finished, folded up Thompson's, and then it was just Allen then. Actually, I think that might have been when they changed it to Story.
So did many people come over from Thompson's
Oh,
to?
yeah. Well,
Okay.
we got Sodders and Jim Sodders and Donnie Paris. Donnie Paris's dad, he worked for me on a couple jobs.
Man, there's a lot of families that have grown up in and through and around the company, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot. And that's just the blood families. I mean, then of course you got your chosen family.
Right.
I mean, back when I started, it was literally the frog in the pot, and somebody turned the fire on under our pot. Because before we just worked around Ames, it was all ISU stuff. We started having to go out of town, and pretty soon there you were working out of town, not knowing what to do,
Sure.
Back when I started, there weren't cell phones. I mean, kids nowadays, they don't even know what it's like to hug somebody. I mean, back then, that was pretty traumatic, being away from your family for a week, your blood family.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where the chosen family, your Story family, ended up being a bigger part of your life than your blood family, which is all right. I mean, I just love everybody that I've worked with.
So where are some of the places you've done projects, and what have those been?
Oh my God, Mike!
Pick like half a dozen. I know.
Well, I'll just tell you my favorite.
Perfect.
These are probably my second favorite. It was the Donnelly Marketing Building next to our old office here on South Bell. That's
Right.
REG now. I love that job. That was a nice job. Then we also went to Marshfield, Wisconsin to do a building for them.
Right.
And that's when you learned that a lot of times towns are named a certain word for a reason.
How are the soils up there?
Marshfield, it's a lot different than Iowa, let me tell you. Yeah.
Sure.
There's not much soil there. It's mostly rock. They'd have a windstorm, the trees would just tip over because the roots were only like a foot deep.
Sure.
That was interesting, but my favorite job was Des Moines WRA Biosolids.
I remember that job. So
Yeah.
why was it your favorite?
Well, I had all my blood family working there and my chosen family. We had no rules. Pat took all the rules away as golden cowboy. We'd figure out a way to do it better and quicker and faster, and we did it that way. It was great.
It was great.
It was the funnest job I've ever been on.
And so that job, as I recall, was a big structure with a roof and no walls.
Yeah.
And they would take the solids out of the tanks and they would air them out there and dry them out.
Put them under a roof so they could dry out until they'd spread them, because that's the trouble with biosolids. You can spread them in the spring or fall. You can't do anything when the crops are in the ground. So.
Yeah.
And of course the WRA, man, they're good to work for. People there they're part of the team.
Yeah.
A lot of owners don't get that they're part of the team, and that really makes it tough. But
It does. You became a stockholder in the company. So what are your memories of that? Did you come in with a class of stockholders? What do you remember about that?
I think it was me and Rod came in at the same time. Rod might have had stock before me. I don't remember, but
So who'd you buy from?
Dean Porat.
Okay.
I was just doing my part to help him move forward, is
Okay.
the way I'll put it.
Okay.
I mean, that's one thing about our management that I wanted to bring up, because when we were a union, management and the workers weren't ever supposed to get along. It was adversarial.
Sure.
Well, and then we were double-breasted, and it changed a little bit, and then we got rid of the Thomson side, but it was still the same managers, and they just could not shake that paradigm, I guess. Because, I mean, and it's took quite a few years. I've been here through it, seeing them drop off one at a time, and the new managers coming on. And I'm really proud of our management now because they really do believe that. What's our saying? Why? Because you matter.
Yep.
Yeah. That's actually what you guys believe in.
It is.
Yeah, because that's the way it should always been. Every employee matters here.
Yeah, that is our safety. Our safety why is why because you matter.
Yeah.
And our company purpose is building because people matter. Because everything we do touches somebody, even the biosolids job.
Yeah, and you need everybody to get it done. So.
Yep. So you and your dad, wizard class. Any other people to put in that category?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'd put Robbie there.
Okay.
Robbie Greenwood. And I'm not going to leave anybody out because
Sure.
they've all progressed, and I think all our superintendents are pretty much close to that. It all boils down to this. You either work from your ego or you work from your heart. If you work from your heart, then you're selfless. If you work from your ego, you're selfish.
Right.
Makes a big difference.
So you've spent, I know, in the last 6-8 years, you've spent time developing young people. So you continue to work part-time in doing so, but for the last part of your full-time, you were taking a little bit more of an advisory role and trying to put young people up front to grow them up. So talk about that.
Well, I wish I could have spent a lot more time doing that, but I call it fast track. You'd work along, and then next Monday you'd get a call, and those guys were gone, and you'd have a new crew because skills are needed elsewhere. I mean,
Right.
it's just a sign of the times. We couldn't keep a tribe. You know, if I could have had my own little tribe, I could have taught them, then they could go to another tribe and learn that skill set. But yeah, I was fortunate enough, like Tom Gorman, I had him for quite a few hours on a single job. That worked out really well.
It did.
I dumped a lot of knowledge on him pretty quick. Then he got married and left.
He did.
He might come back. You never know.
He'll be back.
Yeah. And of course, Nate Wolf, I've spent a lot of time with him. He's doing good. Pretty proud of him, too.
Yep.
But I don't want to leave anybody out. I've tried teaching everybody I've ever touched. So.
You have. So let's reverse that role. Or reverse that thought process. Who have you looked up to, or who made really big investments in you and your career?
Well, of course, my dad.
Right.
I just didn't know most of the teaching I was getting, but him, and then, of course, Marty Martinson. I've worked with him a lot. But probably the biggest asset I had was Larry Sperlich. I mean, that guy's a genius. He was always big on planning. I mean, that's the key. I remember Storm Lake, we poured this massive slab probably 6 times before we ever poured it. We'd actually go walk through the field and imagine the concrete trucks coming in, which way they should come in. And we got it all set up and poured. It worked great, except it rained that night, but it still come out all right.
Sure.
Yeah. He was pretty smart. He was always safety conscious, too.
Right.
Well, those are the 3 main ones.
Got it.
Everybody I worked with, I learned something from.
Sure.
Jim Sauter, Donnie Paris.
Got it.
Yeah, I learned a lot from John Minke, too. He was a Thompson guy.
What did John do?
Oh, he was a foreman,
Okay.
concrete forming and stuff like that, but he run his crew. You could tell when he didn't like somebody because he'd tell him, why don't you go help Jim over there? I don't need you anymore. So you knew when he ended up with a crew, that was all the good guys.
Okay. So what words of wisdom do you have for, I'll say any of us, but particularly younger people coming up in the industry?
First, I'd tell the young guys, keep a journal, because you think you're going to remember it, but you won't. I mean, it's good to jot the weird stuff down because you'll use it later. And then the second thing is you just got to start becoming a wizard. I mean, you got to learn how to work out of your heart and not your ego. Because the ego doesn't care about anybody but itself. And if that's the way you're going to work, you won't have any help because these guys are pretty smart out in the field.
Right.
They'll figure that out right away. And that's the main thing. I mean, if you look at it as a pyramid, the guys that work out of their egos, the pyramid's sitting on the ground, big side down, and they're up at the point thinking everybody's supporting them. Well, that's not how it works. If you work out of your heart, you're the pyramid's upside down, and you're holding that point, and that's your guys and everybody you're supporting. You got to know who you work for. You're supporting your guys so they can do the job. Otherwise, you just do it by yourself, and that ain't going to work.
You know, that, so you've said that for a long time, and that's always made a big impression upon me. So in our 2.0 trailers, and I hold court in those, or I invite a lot of people in, and I'm very clear that, hey, everybody works. Everybody here is in service of the work. Everybody here is in service of the guys and gals that are executing this week's plan. And if we're ever not aligned that way, that's a problem.
Yeah, including the owner. Because here's the other thing, like in my management style, I always expect to have fun on the job. If you can't have fun on a job, you better go do something else. But that don't mean horseplaying and goofing off. It means making the job interesting and fun for people.
Right.
And it's all about priorities. First thing is the job has to get done. The work has to get in place. That's the number one priority. Then the second is you take care of your people, your subs, suppliers, you know. You got to manage the job. And the third thing is that way I always looked at it, and I didn't know I'd made that impression on Ethan Dix, but he brought this up to me one day, that when I get a job, the way I look at it, that's my job. That's my property. And I treat it that way. Until I'm satisfied with it, I'm going to keep it. And the owner don't have any say in it, don't get to take possession until I'm satisfied with what's there. And then I'll hand it over to them, and it's their project.
Do you recall some really owners that you really enjoyed working with?
Of course, WRA, they're great. The Boone wastewater plant, they were good. I mean, I'm going to miss a lot of them, but
sure,
just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Then Ron Franson, when he was with Donnelly's, he was a great owner. That was a pretty good owner to work for.
Sure. Tell me about your kids.
Well, Sarah, she's the oldest, my daughter. She's managing the bus company down the road here next to us.
Oh, Durham?
Durham, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, she made a TV commercial here a week ago about the COVID process they've got on the buses. But then, of course, Joe, he worked at Little Story for quite a while, and then him and JD, they're out on their own.
Still doing that?
Oh, yeah, they're doing good.
Good.
And then, of course, everybody knows Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of a kind. One of a kind. So you have you have some hobbies, so and have had some hobbies. I know.
Oh, I've had lots of hobbies.
Yeah. So what? Your mind never stops. So how do you apply your creativity and your thought and your hobbies?
I've raised tropical fish. That's fun.
Yeah.
It took a few years to learn that you're not raising tropical fish, you're raising bacteria. No, really.
Yeah.
If you got the bacteria right, the fish do great, which kind of piqued my interest in the sewer plants, the wastewater plant work. 'Cause,
Sure.
I mean, it's just really interesting. Oh, I had motorcycles, Harleys. I'd made 2 choppers before I started working for Story.
Okay.
That was fun. But then that movie Easy Riders come out. That just ruined the Harley Davidson mystique. Before I'd pull up to a stop sign, people would stop like half a block back. And one day, this station wagon goes by and all the kids are waving and waving. I hear the mom go, "Don't wave at him." And they don't even know who I am, but I guess I was scary looking.
Sure.
Drag racing, I'm a professional spectator there. Nitro drag racing is the only form of motorsports a deaf person could listen to and a blind person could watch. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you ever see one in person, you go, "Oh yeah, I get what Jimmy said now."
Okay. Cool. Well, we'll get all this put together and publish next week.
All right, you got a lot of editing to do.
A little bit, maybe. So there you have it, straight from Jim Rogers himself. A lot of his philosophical thinking around really who you work for and what it takes to be wizard class by his definition. Also, I'm reminded of what a family business construction is and what a family influence not only his family but many others have had on Story construction over our period of time. It's a real treat to get some time with Jim and to hear his wisdom. He's referred to by a lot of people in the company as being one of the most creative minds that we've had, and we're still able to tap some of that even today. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time.